how would regenerative economics address the 8 people owning half the wealth?
Well, so one of the principles is, in my language, again, the language is less important, but robust circulation. So any system, our bodies, have to have a healthy metabolism. And the key to a healthy metabolism is that you have access to healthy inputs, and you have an ability to process waste and get your waste out of your system, and that the nutrients circulate within the system. So hold that thought for a second. Another principle is empowered participation. And what that means is that all parts of a system need to be empowered to participate in the system. So our toes need to be empowered to access the circulation of oxygen in our body, or our toes will rot. And if our toes rot, we can't walk, and if we can't walk, we can't be healthy. So the empowered participation of our toes is important certainly to our toes, but it's also important to the health of our whole body. And if you put those two principles together and think about a money-based economy where 8 people have half the money, it by definition is in conflict with both the empowered participation of the half of the planet that has no money in a money-based economy, and we can talk about the importance of the non-money wealth. That's a different point. But there's some level of access to basic needs that people don't have. And the point is that because they don't have access to those needs, their basic needs, they can't participate in the health of the global economy. So the whole can't be healthy when half of humanity is unable to make their basic needs. And the circulation is clearly not working. So there's, it's like clogging. All of the money is clogging up at the top, in this case, in 8 families. And it's not really the 8 families' fault. It's the system design has delivered that outcome because that's the way the system is designed to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in my understanding, it shows also that the dysynchronization, so that the cause and the effect, or the question and the answer, are usually separate. And so there is a question that appears, and somewhere in life there is a potential answer. We can say, okay, that's how life is, or we can say, wait a minute, maybe that's a symptom of something. Exactly. And so that if we are an integral part of a system is one option, or we are a separate particle within a system is another option. But that we question the basic frame of being a separate particle within a system, and we look if there are many separate particles, or many people perceive themselves as separate particles, so what's going to be the system of fragmentation that we're going to see? Because our inner architecture, what we carry within, we need some kind of inner representation in order to think a thought. Without being able to think a thought, we are not able to create an external cultural architecture. And I believe that, for example, in the healthcare system, we have to ask the question, why is there a lack of money and funding in the healthcare system, which is the global regenerative system, the self-healing mechanism of humanity doesn't work. So we can say, okay, that's the way how the world is. And I would say, no, I don't think that that's the way how the world is. That's a big symptom of a big elephant in the room that is walking amongst us, and we accepted that there is an elephant in the room that we are not talking about. And so that underlying principle, like the wisdom traditions, since thousands of years, and I loved when you said, okay, it's not really something new, it's something that has been around for a long time, and we just realign with universal principles, and that many of the great wisdom traditions talk about kind of a unified field, talk about like an interrelated web of life, where the planet is just part of a much bigger system. So what is if ecology is not a planetary question, it's a universal question. So how are we opening our interior perceptions, our perspectives, our thinking, our feeling for the system that we are in, and we see, wow, it's actually interrelated systems everywhere. And so I think that there are very important questions to ask. What is actually working that the system isn't fully working. So what's working in the background? Like in the backstage, you see like the stage setting is changing, but who is changing the stage setting? So, and I think those are very interesting questions to ask.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally resonated with that, and that the symptoms, both the 8 families and poverty, are not the problem. Those are the symptoms of a system design. Right. And poverty is not something to fix. Poverty is a lack of regenerative health, just like cancer is a lack of regenerative health. And the vast accumulation of wealth among an ever-shrinking number of people is a symptom of a lack of a regenerative system. And there's lots of ways that could be addressed, but it's the system design that's at the issue. And another way of saying what you just said, Thomas, I think, is one of my favorite Einstein quotes, where Einstein says, theory determines what we're able to see. And so we're sort of trapped in a system that we accept as a given, even though it's a human, it's in a sense, it's a human artifact that we've created. It doesn't need to be the way it is. And it's delivering outcomes we all agree are unhealthy and unsustainable. But because we accept the system as a given, we can't see our way out. And that's where getting back to first principles, creating an overarching theory that's rooted in reality, in truth, if you will, to me is what we need to go, given where we are in today's context.
And also that we have been born into a system that now many aspects of that system we take as a given. And I think it's so important for our consciousness development and our awareness development to say, okay, how can we question the main pillars of our reality? And we just look at them. And if we find out that they are working and they're in alignment with life, great. But maybe we're going to find out that we are sitting in some given aspects that have to be changed in order for the system to jump to a new level of intelligence, coherence, understanding, and also regenerative processes.
So your point, Thomas, makes me want to go back to my capital markets example for a moment. And we treat markets as if, from Adam Smith's invisible hand, markets have the answers to our problems. So the unquestioned assumption is that if we make markets work better, make them more transparent, make them fairer, we will get the outcomes we need. Well, now I would argue that that's completely flawed logic. Markets are tools. Markets are not some universal principle that hold the truth about the future. And yet we just spent 20 years in finance pursuing this idea of transparency in markets with our desire to have disclosure about ecological footprints and social dynamics within companies. Now that's all important work, but it's presumed on the idea that if the markets have that information, they will respond and we will solve our climate change problems and our social problems. That's just flawed thinking. And again, the emphasis on the importance of questioning the unquestioned assumptions, like what is a market? Is it a tool or is it a principle?